I'm Mark Hine, Government Affairs Committee Chairman and Board Member for the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce. Rick Tomachek, sitting here to my right, is Vice President of the Chamber. He will be the timekeeper for tonight in the candidate forum. Zach Wharf, agent for New York Life and Securities and Chamber, making written questions from the audience. So Zach is in the back there. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and he will supply you with note card or piece of paper to write that on, and then he will bring that up later on in the forum. Tonight we are doing at 6 o'clock here, the candidate forum for USD 457 Board of Education. And with us tonight we have Alex Wallace, Gene Clifford, Jeff Sims, Laura Boers, and Tim Hannigan. All five are running for the Board of Education for USD 457. There are 3 seats available. Each candidate will have up to 5 minutes for an opening statement. Names were pre-drawn to determine who will give the opening statements first, and I will start to my left to let you know that, Alex, right now. Following opening statements, the candidates will be asked questions that were prepared by the Chamber Government Affairs Committee, members of the Chamber, the Garden City Telegram, and the community. If time permits, we will have questions from the audience, hopefully, that will be asked. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and again, Zach will provide you a card to write that question on. Those questions will be handed to me later on in the forum. When we get to the question part of the forum, candidates will have no more than 2 minutes per question. Candidates will be notified when there's a 1 minute and 30 seconds left for their answer, and again, Rick will be doing that. Candidates will take turns answering questions. We'll start with Alex Wallace for the opening statement, and then the first question, Gene will be the first one, and we will rotate so the same person is not first every time. So you'll have an opportunity to hear others speak first prior to you, at least at some point in time. The forum will wrap up to a 3-minute closing from each of the candidates. We'd like to thank the City of Garden City for providing the venue for tonight's forum. The forum is also live by clicking on the link at the gardencitychamber.net website and on the Chamber's Facebook page. This live event is produced for the Chamber by KDEGL TV 23. It will also be broadcasted by the City of Garden City on local Channel 8. With that, we'll go ahead and get started. And again, you have up to 5 minutes for your opening statement. And Alex, we'll start with you.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Alex Wallace. My family and I moved here 18 years ago. I also own and operate Wallace Electric for the last 14 years. My wife and I have 3 kids. We have 2 sons in high school right now, a senior and a sophomore. We had a daughter go through the education system here in Garden. She went on to graduate from WSU with a degree as well. Natalie and I greatly believe that our kids' success today and in the future have benefited from the education they received at the Garden City Schools. I served previously on the board from 2011 to 2015. I thoroughly enjoyed working with the community, the teachers, the students, the parents, and the staff. I would like to ask for your vote in the upcoming November election to be able to serve the community again. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Gene.
Thank you. I'd also like to thank the Chamber of Commerce and the Chamber's Government Affairs Committee for arranging the candidate forum and for giving me and the other candidates the opportunity to provide the voters with more information as they select their representatives for the Board of Education. I'm Gene Clifford, and I've served on the school board for the past 8 years, including 2 years as president and 2 years as vice president. I've worked hard to ensure our board is strong, knowledgeable, and informed about the concerns of the community, staff, parents, and students, and is responsive to those concerns. Professionally, I hold a Juris Doctorate degree and have been an attorney for 35 years. I served as a judge advocate for 30 years in the Air Force and Air Force Reserve and retired as a colonel. I also hold a Bachelor of Arts degree in elementary education and a master's degree in special education, and I have a current Kansas teaching certificate in both of these areas. I've been active in my state and national school board associations, and am a graduate of the Kansas Association of School Boards Leadership for Tomorrow class. I've earned the KASB Boardsmanship Academy Level 1 and 2 Honor Roll certificates, have attended KASB annual meetings and government relations seminars, and was selected as one of 10 Kansas representatives to the National School Board Association Federal Legislative Conference in Washington, D.C. These experiences have expanded my knowledge and understanding of K-12 education issues and provided me with a greater understanding of the impact of legislation on our district and how we can best work with our legislators to improve education. I have 6 children, all of whom have been enrolled in the district, and currently I have 1 enrolled in middle school and 1 in the high school. I'm keenly aware of the issues parents and our community deal with on a day-to-day basis. My priorities as a member of the Board of Education are to continue to work hard to promote excellence and high achievement for all students in all of our schools, to provide our staff with the level of support needed to be successful in doing so, and to continue to work towards recruiting outstanding teachers for our district, to ensure that we utilize our resources wisely and continue to innovate in order to gain more from the resources we do have, and to maintain strict fiscal control over our own spending and program decisions, to promote the value of K-12 education to our legislators, and to continue to listen and seek input from the community, our parents, students, and staff, so that our district truly reflects the concerns and interests of our Garden City community, and to assure that the district is aware of and responsive to those voices and concerns in its decision-making. I would like to continue to serve on the school board for several reasons. I've enjoyed my time on the board and believe my experiences and education uniquely qualify me to understand the various issues involved, and I will work hard to continue to do so. I believe I can effectively advocate for all of our students and can represent the community's interests and concerns on the board to ensure that the school district meets the needs of our community. I would be honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve as a member of the Board of Education, and I would ask for your vote in the upcoming election in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jeff, your opening statement, please.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you, Rick, for having us today. Appreciate everybody taking the time to vet us and see what our future is with the Board of Education. When I look at the Board of Education, I always ask, who are the people that want to run and why do they want to do it? My name is Jeff Sims. I've been a member of Garden City residents for the last 3 years. I grew up in St. Louis. I grew up with a single mother who was a hairdresser. Nobody in my family ever graduated from college. Education wasn't a focal point of my family or the neighborhood that I grew up in. We were hardworking people who worked hourly and got paid weekly. Fortunately, I was able to catch a football and run really fast, and it opened up an opportunity for me to get an education and go to college. That opportunity has opened doors in my life that I never imagined growing up. It's allowed me to get 3 college degrees. It's allowed me to marry my wife, who's got 3 college degrees and also works at Garden City Community College. Our life has been 22 years working in the classroom and working with students to see how education can change lives. I've been fortunate that I worked on the school board at 234, USD 234 in Fort Scott. A lot of times school boards are run by people who own businesses and don't work in education. I think it's important that you have people that are touching the students and understanding the day-to-day struggles that the teachers are working with. My plan, if I'm a part of the school board, is to make sure that our finances are used effectively, they're touching the students in the classroom, and we're creating opportunities for our students when they leave Garden City Community College, Garden City High School, and have the opportunity to go on to college. In 3 years, 7 out of all 10 jobs in the United States will need some type of post-secondary education. Our children need to be leaving USD 457 to have the opportunity to move on, to have opportunities in the ever-growing expanse that we have. I appreciate the opportunity to run for school board, and I look forward to more questions.
Thank you, Jeff. Laura, your opening statement, please.
Thank you. I'd like to echo the appreciation to the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce and to the city and the Telegram for hosting this event. It's truly appreciated. As was stated, my name is Laura Bors. I came to Garden City in 2001 and began working for then Finney County Attorney John Wheeler. I prosecuted all sorts of cases from dogs at large to murder and everything in between. But my primary focus was on juvenile offenders and children in need of care. Children in need of care are kids who aren't going to school like they're supposed to or who have been abused and neglected by their parents. In 2011, I decided it was time to go into private practice and open up my own firm. I started off in a small firm at the corner of Fleming and Kansas, and after about a year there, my secretary started complaining that we didn't have enough space. So my husband and I decided to purchase a building in downtown Garden City. I mention that because the school district only has a few ways in order to bring revenue into it. The money from the state and then property taxes. So as a homeowner and as a commercial property owner, I understand the burden that we are placing on people with the property taxes. We were lucky this year to keep that level because I am currently serving on the board, and I hope to be cognizant of that in the future as well as time progresses. My caseload now, as in my private practice, I handle a lot of domestic cases, and I'm one of 6 firms that handles indigent defense services for Finney County. Again, the bulk of my work with that contract is juvenile offender and children in need of care. So you're probably starting to see a trend here. Kids are my focal point. The best interest of kids is something that I always concentrate on. So much so that I guess I've gotten the attention of a few people. Chief Justice Nuss with the Kansas Supreme Court recently appointed me to the Juvenile Justice Oversight Committee, which is overseeing the implementation of new juvenile offender laws in Kansas. I'm on the Department of Education's Mental Health Advisory Council, and I'm the Southwest Kansas Vice President for the Kansas Association of School Boards. Locally, I serve on the Juvenile Corrections Advisory Board as the defense attorney representative. Again, showing a trend about kids that I probably can't say no, and my commitment to public service. When I went into private practice, I decided to run for the board because I felt that sense of loss no longer serving the public like I had been at the county attorney's office. Now, while kids are a huge focal point for us, I also concentrate on teachers and what they need as well. As such, for the past few years, Boars Law has been the presenting sponsor for the Crystal Apple Awards, which, if you'd like to, the dinner is November 16th. I'm sure you can see Mr. Tomczyk after this event to purchase your ticket. It is the premier chamber event. Forget about the wine tasting. It's all about the Crystal Apple Awards. And we'll highlight some of the best and brightest teachers in Finney County. But none of this would be possible if it weren't for the huge support that I have at home. I have 2 incredible young men that I'm proud to say are my sons. Carl is 12 and is going to Kenneth Henderson. I'd like to give a shout out to them. It was a hard-fought battle against Hayes today, but the 7th graders fell 38-8. They tried. It was tough. At least we scored. So they're now 3-1. And then my son Henry, who is 11, going on 50. He's a 6th grader at Jenny Barker. My husband of 17 years is Carl. He worked at USD 457 in various capacities as a teacher. 6th grade, working at the expulsion school as well that we used to have. And now he's the regional program director for a program called Youth Entrepreneurs, which we are lucky to have at our own high school. Whenever we can get a quality program that doesn't cost our school district money, that's a great thing for us, which is what Youth Entrepreneurs does. So that's me in a nutshell. I hope to have your support on November 7th and your vote. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Laura. Your opening statement, please, Tim.
Thanks, Mark. My name is Tim Hannigan. My wife and I have 3 girls, all of them educated here in Garden City. My oldest daughter is at the University of Michigan. We are in our 21st year in Garden City, and during that 21 years, I've had the fortune, or maybe for many of you, the misfortune of working with a lot of you or seeing you in my office. So I'm known in Garden City exclusively as a professional. But what I want you to know is that I didn't start out on this path. My parents didn't go to college. I was actually raised on a failing dairy farm about a C student. And it wasn't because my parents didn't care about my education. Both of them actually had a second job trying to keep the farm from failing. My freshman year in high school, I had a friend who talked me into joining the Future Farmers of America, the Future Farmer, about the last thing that I wanted to do. At that time, I was milking cows at 5 in the morning and at 5 at night. And if you've ever been on a dairy farm, you know that there's part of that smell that you can never really get off of you. But he convinced me to join. And when I joined, I met my first inspiration. His name was Mr. Kuhlman. Mr. Kuhlman had glasses about this thick, and when he talked, he liked to talk with his hands. And you had to, when he was really excited, you had to stay a ways away from him because he had a lot of spit that came out when he was talking. But he inspired us. We all emulated him. We all wanted to be like him. And the reason for that was because he had a unique way of instilling hope in each of us. He was relentless in pushing us to dream bigger. And he made us proud of the strengths that we all possessed. He made us proud even of being from a farm, because he believed that some of the lessons that we were being taught on the farm would serve us as well as the English and math lessons that we were getting in school. Through 4 years of high school and 12 years of college, it seemed like every time that it was critical for me, I would meet another Mr. Kuhlman in my life. And it was because of that that I actually was able to be where I am today. Now, I know that not everyone can be an orthodontist. Not everyone should. Well, at least not everyone should in Garden City, anyway. But I tell this story because I really feel like the Mr. Kuhlmans of my life, if it wasn't for him, my story wouldn't turn out like this. When I walk through our schools, particularly the high school, I see a part of myself in practically all of the kids that I encounter. And I wonder if they've met their Mr. Kuhlman, if they've met the person that's inspired them, that's recognized their unique talent to help them be what they should be. So I want to be a part of this school board. I want to be a part of our education because I have the passion that comes from what education has brought to me. And I think I've learned a lot about this community over the last 20 years. I've learned a lot from the people that I've met, through the connections I've gained on all of the different boards that I've served. And I would like to bring those partnerships to our school board. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Okay, the first question, I realized before I asked this, you may have touched on this or you may have answered this in your opening statement, but we're going to start out with this, and Gene, we'll start with you. What motivated you to run for the Garden City Public Schools Board of Education, and do you have a particular issue or platform that you are campaigning on that you would tackle if you were elected?
Well, what originally motivated me to run for the school board was my own children being enrolled in the school district. I wanted to make sure that I was involved and that the school, that my understanding of how the school district was run would be able to be shared with other people, because I felt like if there was something I didn't understand, that I wanted to find out why and to share that information so that other people would be able to learn more about it. Because I think the school district is one of those organizations that we don't think about very often, but when we have an issue, then we try to address that, but we may not know all of the ramifications of what we're asking. So it was my own children that originally interested me, but I also share an interest in all of those children. And my children have been very diverse and have had different skills and abilities, and I see that in many of the other students as well. And so what I want for my own children, I want for all the children in Garden City. And the priorities that I have deal with improving the educational outcomes for the students in our district in terms of teachers, student achievement, retention, fiscal responsibility, and the ability to be responsive to the community's issues. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jeff?
Thank you for the question. What's made me want to run for school board is I've seen how education's changed lives. My own life, my family's life. I have 3 children in the school district. I have a 10th grader, a 9th grader, and a 7th grader. We've been fortunate to touch the elementary schools, the intermediate schools, the middle schools, and the high schools. And why I've wanted to run for school board in Garden City really comes down to one event. One day I was working with an educator in the Garden City School District, and they told me that my son was hanging around some bad kids. My son was in 7th grade at the time. It's hard for me to understand why a 7th grader is a bad kid. I'm fortunate that I've worked in education for 22 years, and I've seen that 7th grader turn into school board members. That 7th grader could have been me. You know, the reality is we need to continue to improve as a school district and put the opportunity in the classroom and help our teachers be successful so that they can help those 7th graders become future school board members.
Thank you, Jeff. Laura?
Well, 6 years ago when I decided to first run, it was all about my kids. Back then the election was in April, and my oldest son was soon to be a kindergartner. And I was very fortunate growing up in the school district that I was in to have a strong educational background, and wanted to be able to make sure that as much as I could help provide that for my kids and other kids as well, I wanted to be able to be there and do what I could. My husband will tell you it's because I'm an Apache helicopter parent, but I'm trying to work on that. But it's basically, again, going back to the kids and making sure that we're doing right by them. I also, when I first ran, was very, I guess, naive about things as well, because I remember walking around in Dillon's on Friday night, and you could tell which were teachers. And when it was a 5-week pay period, because those teachers hadn't had the opportunity to go shopping for 5 weeks because of how they were paid. And I'm proud that the administration, after a few years of me nagging them about it, finally looked at that and said, yes, we can do better for our teachers. That was those were my original things thinking about it. Now that I'm more educated about the school board and everything that we do, I know I do have a few things that I want to see carried on. We're no longer have No Child Left Behind. I would love to see our testing footprint for kids reduced, letting teachers teach, making sure that we have appropriate quality programs, but making sure that our people, our teachers, are coming first. And in a nutshell, and I hate to use that phrase again, that's where I'm coming from. I know it's a lot more complex than that, and I would love to sit down and talk with people more about that. Unfortunately, 2 minutes doesn't justify everything we do for the Board of Education.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
Well, I told my story because I think my background reflects the background of a vast majority of the kids in our school district. And fortunately for me, I had someone that helped me find my path. Jeff has already made a comment about the fact that before this term is ended, roughly 67% of the jobs that are in the United States are going to require some type of education beyond high school. And right now, about 50% of our kids in our high school are seeking something beyond high school. And we have to figure out a way to motivate the kids to push themselves farther, to go farther. Now, one thing that I do disagree with Jeff a little bit about, though, is the fact that small business is not a good training ground for education. I started my business from scratch 20 years ago, and really for me, it's about the allocation of resources. You have a limited number of resources, and you have to figure out where you're going to allocate those to get the best results that you have. And I believe that not only that business background, but the 20 years that I've spent in this community on different boards, including the Economic Development Board, It's given me the training that I need to be useful and to bring something to the board.
Thank you, Tim. Alex?
My first reaction or commitment to the board was when Dr. Atha came out and was promoting out to my business and was promoting the new high school. And he brought a friend of his along, Mike Hughes. And then we continued on with lunch, and being in business for the 7 or 8 years, I wanted to start to be more part of the community. I wanted to also have a chance for my sons and daughter to grow up and look at their dad as a community leader and be involved in the community, and hopefully they follow in the footsteps. Talking to Dr. Atha and Mike about the school, and then also parent-teacher conferences, gave me a curiosity to dive into our school system and what is the board really about. So to lead for my kids and to be a part of the community, I sought after that office, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. People ask me, why do you serve on the school board? I said, you have no idea the interaction we have with students, with parents, with the community, the staff, teachers. The greatest reward for us, not that we get paid, but the greatest reward for us that I enjoyed every year, those 4 years, was handing that diploma to that kid. That was the greatest satisfaction and payment that I could ever receive. And some of the kids that I got to hand that diploma to were kids from friends that I got to watch them grow up from 4 years old. That is awesome. The more I got into the 4 years of serving on the board, the more I understood about state funding, teachers' involvement, parents' involvement, community involvement of the education of our kids. I ran, after my term, I ran again. I was unsuccessful, and I vowed to myself that the next time I wanted to run for the board again to seek that gratification for me to be a community. Thank you.
Thank you, Alex. Okay, question number 2. Jeff, we'll start with you. How do you feel about changing USD 457 policy to allow parents to request transfer of their students to other schools?
I believe that the best education would be for our students to stay within our district. And I think we need to fight to keep that opportunity home and keep our students in our communities. And because the opportunity as they grow up together, our community creates a bond with the students. We get to understand the students. Education doesn't always start at 8 o'clock and then at 3 o'clock. Okay, we educate our students all day long, on the weekends, throughout the year. And I think it's very important that you have a tie to your community and you have a tie to your school district. And I think it's important that we keep our students in our districts.
Thank you. Laura?
Can you repeat the question, please, Mark?
You know, and I think we should have added a little bit to this. So, Jeff, I'm going to allow you to come back to this. I believe this is meant within the district. How do you feel about changing USD 45 policy to allow parents to request transfer of their students to other schools within the district?
Within the district?
Yes, within the district.
Well, within the district, I think we, as a school board, we need to work to make sure that all of our schools are meeting all of the needs of the community. I think it should be a concern of the district if parents are wanting to move their students to other schools, and we need to look into the reasons why and how we can strengthen those other schools.
Thank you. Sorry for the...
No problem.
And that's where I thought you were heading, but I wanted to make sure. That started about 6 years ago, and there was actually a community panel, community committee, there we go, that reviewed the borders and making the borders for each of the different schools, and the decision after spending the money that it took to hire a consultant to review the boundaries and to review trend data with regard to where people were moving and where we were going to be seeing bubbles. It was decided by the board prior to me coming on that we would leave it within those boundaries. I think all of our schools are excellent schools. Yes, some have different strengths and maybe different weaknesses, or less strengths. I don't know if weaknesses would be the right word, But I would hope that they would feel comfortable with attending the school where they are living. It's going to create a sense of community within that area, having a neighborhood school. But it's also not a strict yes or no policy. There are ways to contact Dr. Carlin in order to seek a change with regard to that based upon certain issues. And I know Dr. Carlin takes those very seriously before granting or denying those things. I think it's also difficult for transportation in dealing with any type of change of that nature. So I would be hesitant to make the change at this point, but that's not to say that my opinion can't change based off of different information that may be provided to the board at a future time with regard to whether or not that needs to be changed. But there are many different factors that Dr. Carlin can review, so it's not a strict yes or no with regard to the boundaries.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
Yeah, I think the key word is request. I mean, I don't see any problem with a policy that allows parents to make a request to transfer from schools. There should be a concern if you see a trend where one school receives more requests than others to transfer away. But again, the allocation of resources. So there isn't anyone who doesn't understand that class size is critical. You can't just allow people to transfer at the sacrifice of class size. Transportation is an issue. You can't allow people to transfer to the extent that transportation becomes burdensome in one direction or the other. So, the request, everyone should be allowed to make the request. But the educators, the teachers, the administration, and this board, our job is to make sure that the allocation of resources are appropriate such that we're doing the best that we can for all of the kids that we have under our wing or in our responsibility.
Thank you, Tim. Alex?
Yeah, I'm trying to dovetail on to Laura and Tim's comments. Is when I said on the board, this issue did come from us as the boundary lines. And one of the biggest issues was to make sure we had resources at each school, and that we also kept class size down to a minimum per teacher. Another issue that came up is that we didn't want to have kids walking too far to school across busy roads or main streets in our town, so that the boundary lines came apart that and kept them there. We did have a few people that come in and requested to be transferred, and due to a medical issue or to a health issue on a mental capacity, and we were able to get a couple of those changed. Now, it did take some talking on the board and through Dr. Carlin and Dr. Ath at that time to grant that request. But there's no yes or no at that time, or a definite no that you couldn't do it. There was always a request.
Okay. Thank you. Jean?
Yes, as I understand the current policy, it's possible but not, but the bar is pretty high to request a transfer out of the boundary from which your home is located to a different school. They were established to ensure that the schools were adequate for the students in an adjacent area and to reduce forced transfers for people who might be moving into the area sometime during the school year. Personally, I would prefer a more flexible system. I do think our system is not as amenable to accommodate child care issues for the members of our community and to individuals, the circumstances of individual families. And I especially think that this is an issue concerning the disparity in size for the middle schools, because there are assets and differences between those that I think some people would prefer to have gone to one of the schools rather than the one in which they were living. So I would like to see that policy become more flexible.
Thank you, Jean. Laura, start with you on this question. USD 457 has become a trendsetter in its efforts to recruit and retain teachers through various programs and incentives. Though there is still a large teacher shortage, not just in Garden City, but the state as a whole. What do you think needs to be done to address the local teacher shortage?
Unfortunately, it's not just the state of Kansas, it's the United States. I know but Kansas is getting a bad rap, in particular because of the way that education has been treated the past few years. There was a huge billboard on I-70 saying, "Teachers, come to Missouri, we'll treat you right." That's not the type of advertising we need to have in Kansas. There's not a good solution. I think by letting teachers be professionals and not keeping our thumb on them as much as we have been because of No Child Left Behind and because of Every Student Succeeds Act, which followed No Child Left Behind, being able to try to give them some more freedom, which we are doing. Teachers are doing alternative seating in their classrooms. They're having a lot more flexibility now. I think hopefully that will help, making sure that giving kids in high school that fire to become a teacher, I think is going to be helpful too. I think the scariest thing though is the salaries. The past 5 years, USD 457 has not been able to give a raise to teachers. We've been able to follow the salary schedule, so they've been able to follow the step based off of their longevity and their amount of time with the school district. But still, if you're a beginning teacher and you have 2 kids, I believe you meet federal poverty guidelines, and that is not acceptable. We are making strides now. Hopefully, when the Supreme Court comes down with its decision, the legislature will be able to give us some more money and we'll be able to reinvest in our teachers so kids will want to be teachers again. Lots of people, when I was going to school, wanted to be a teacher because it was a good living. And that has gone away, unfortunately. So we need to get that spark back, and we need to be paying our teachers and doing the best that we can by our teachers, and then hopefully the shortage will take care of itself.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
Yeah, I would echo Laura's comments about pay. Unfortunately, this board doesn't have as much control over their pay as they'd like. And I keep using the phrase allocation of resources, and it'd be, for me as a new board member, it'd be interesting to comb with a real careful eye how we are allocating our resources to see if there are any that are available for teachers' pay. But when employees rank their reasons for being happy with their job, most surveys with employees will show you that pay is second or third on their list. And what really most employees want is they want a high degree of control with their environment. And what I worry about more than recruitment is retention. I get that we're not producing the teachers in the state of Kansas at the rate that we need to supply our needs locally. I also get, not being from Garden City, what a challenge it is for the recruiters to recruit teachers here from places like Michigan or other states. And I actually applaud the efforts that the recruitment committee has made to get teachers to even take a look at us. What I would like to see is a real thoughtful address of our retention and a real effort to talk to teachers, survey teachers, and try to find out if it really is just Western Kansas that makes them depart this area, or if there are aspects of their environment that could be under our control that we could change that might make them more happy with their job.
Thank you, Tim. Alex?
Can you repeat the question?
Sure.
The whole question.
USD 457 has become a trendsetter in its efforts to recruit and retain teachers through various programs and incentives. Though there is still a large teacher shortage, not just in Garden City, but the state as a whole, what do you think needs to be done to address the local teacher shortage?
That's a tough one. I think it's been tough for the last 4 to 6 years, the last couple of years in particular, because of the state of Michigan being able to pick back up and hire their teachers back from Garden City so they go back home. The retention part is to make it a teachable environment for our school district, our teachers, to want to stay here. I heard a stat the other day that at K-State they had only 1,200 teachers or future teacher prospects, and the years before it was 1,800 actually enrolled in their first year. So we have a huge shortage coming in. Retention, I believe, could be possibly pay. It could be the environment, it could be the support, and it can be the staff of the district to help them, teachers want to stay. Western Kansas, when I moved out from Wichita to Western Kansas, I was single. It was some of the most dreadful time, 3 years that I had here. Moved back to Wichita, met my wife, we moved back out here for a job position, and here I am 18 years later, I've loved it. If we can get a teacher to that point, I think that'll help out with our teacher retention.
Thank you, Alex. Jean?
Yes, the first thing I think we need to do is to ensure that the teachers that we have are allowed to teach, that we give them the flexibility to have that engagement with the students that reflects their own personal teaching style, and to ensure that the climate in our schools is amenable and positive and promotes the teachers in our school. I'd like to also think that we need to ensure the salaries are commensurate, at least with our surrounding area, and that's sometimes difficult, but we need to make sure that our teaching salaries are comparable to those in the surrounding districts. We also have a Grow Your Own program. We need to model the profession to our young students and to encourage them to enter this line of work and to return to our community. That's been pretty successful in some of our high school classes. We do have students who have come back to the area. And to continue to grow the amenities in Garden City to ensure that those students, once they've been educated, will return to Garden City. And that would include making sure that we have reasonably priced housing available to them, and to also acknowledge their contributions to our community by such things as the Crystal Apple program. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jeff?
I agree with Tim, and when he talks about the retention, we've done a great job of recruitment. Now it's a matter of retention, and I kind of like the idea Missouri has about treating their teachers well. I think Kansas needs to lead the way in treating the way they treat their teachers. Right now, the Supreme Court's going to come out with a ruling probably this Friday on budgeting and things like that, and we're about 1/3 of what was recommended by the state board. And we need to fight for our teachers to make this the best state in the country to be a teacher at. We shouldn't have to cherry pick from other states. They should want to come to our state, and they should want to come to our community. Garden City is a great community, and it is a great opportunity to raise a family here. And I think if we can grow from being recruiters to keep our teachers here, I think we'll have a great opportunity.
Thank you. Tim, start with you in this one. With the level of state funding for public schools always in uncertainty, what would your budget priorities be for the school district? And if you had to propose cuts to the district's budget, where would they come from?
Well, I mean, first off, I want to highlight a comment that was made related to the fiscal responsibility of the board. I mean, it's critical that we constantly remember that we are a taxing entity, and we not only influence the education of the kids that are in the school district, we also have some influence on the economic growth of this community. The property taxes that we assess have a huge influence on whether or not we're considered by projects such as the milk plant or other large economic projects that help our community grow. And I've seen examples. I have an office in Lamar, Colorado. I have another office in Liberal, Kansas. And I've seen situations where the taxing entities have gotten themselves in a position where they're almost, the taxes are a disincentive for economic growth in the community. So when you make priorities, you have to constantly remember that we're not just educating kids, we're trying to ensure that this community continues to grow. And without further growth, we can't support what we already have.
Thank you. Alex?
Prioritize budget. Is that what the question was?
With the level of state funding for public schools always in uncertainty, what would your budget priorities be for the school district? And if you had to propose cuts to the district's budget, where would they come from?
You know, this district has, from serving on the board back then and now, I've read the audit that a group has prepared for the district to where they can cut some stuff. There's some things on there I can see, but I was part of a group in Wichita at a state board environment, and we found out that the city of Garden City, or the school district of Garden City, was running very, very lean. I mean, we had cut and cut and cut as much as we can and not suffer the education criteria for our students, the ability for our teachers to teach in that environment. We have to face budget cuts when each committee or group has to figure out where to cut half a teacher, a half a cabinet maker, a half a custodian, or a full custodian. Those budget cuts are horrible to sit through. They're very necessary, but you have to put the student and teacher first. And right now, I don't know what could be cut from the budget and not affect that student because of the district running so lean as it is now.
Thank you, Alex. Jean?
I would have to echo those comments. The district is running very lean right now, and it would be difficult to make any cuts that would not affect the students in our classroom. My priorities for funding would be those that touch the students in our classroom, and that primarily means our teachers. They are with the students day in and day out, and we need to ensure that they're retained and that they're given and provided the professional development needed to enable them to be the best in front of their students as possible. So I believe that those two areas would be the priorities that I would have. Cuts in terms of trying to reduce our budget, it's already very lean, but our people are our greatest expense, and so that would be where we would have to look and see if there was any opportunity to reduce the number of students or of people in a certain area and not affect the students. So,
Thank you, Jean. Jeff?
When people talk about adding new money to a budget, the state's looking at adding $293 million to the budget over the next 2 years. We have to take into account that inflation and teacher salaries will take over 2/3 of that as we increase. Okay, we need to fight. We can't cut. Okay, we have to be creative. We have to figure out new ways. When you talk about cuts, the thing we have to stay away from is the classroom. Anything that touches a student has to remain because we have to give them the opportunity to succeed. Because, one senator said that if we were going to increase educationally, we'd have to cut healthcare and prisons. Well, I'd much rather figure out a way to cut prisons than our educational system. All right. So the reality is if we want to talk about teachers, but what we need to be is we need to be creative and start looking into technology. Okay. We talk about classroom size and things like that. There's new ways to educate, and we have to look for new, affordable ways to educate.
Thank you, Jeff. Lauren?
One thing I want to, celebrate with our current Board of Education is something that Dr. Hannigan had mentioned as well, is that USD 457 Board has been a huge partner with the city and the county whenever they have come to us, because it's a three-legged stool essentially with regard to property taxes, or maybe four, also with the trustees as well. We have a new development coming in, a new housing development, a new shopping development, where we have essentially given up property taxes for a period of time to help our community grow. And I think the board, as it has been, and I hope in the future, will continue that forward thinking as well, because we do want to grow the community. But one thing that I think also we need to consider is that when the Kansas Association of School Boards was setting out their goals for the upcoming year, this was probably the first year in several where money was not the top issue. It was how can we use effectively the new resources that we are being given to add programs to our classrooms, to add teachers. And based off of the legislature that we have now, and based off of probably what the court will rule, they'll either agree with what is currently the funding structure and the amounts, or they're going to say, in my opinion, more is needed. I think it's going to be one of those two options if I had to bet. I think we're getting beyond the point of having to cut, and I'm trying to be more positive and saying, okay, now what can we do for our kids? What else can we add to the classroom to make it efficient, to make it a better learning environment for them, so we're no longer under the threat of, are we going to experience a mid-year cut? I'm very hopeful that we are beyond that thinking.
Thank you. Okay, this is a two-part question. Alex, we're back to you. Do you know what the open meeting law is? And if asked by anyone, would you knowingly violate the open meeting law?
It's been a while since I've studied that when we went through board orientation in the open meeting law. It's been 4 years. You ask a lot of questions with the current board members or the board members at that time, and Dr. Atha and Dr. Carlin now. It's difficult to say. I'm not 100% sure on that, but I do know enough to understand going to the board orientation that we were presented with to not violate that.
Thank you. Jean?
I do understand the open meeting law, and I would never knowingly violate that. I make it a practice to refrain from visiting with and talking to other school board members, especially when you see them out in a place and the public is there, and I don't contact them otherwise. So I understand that, and I think that that's an excellent policy. And I think that all meetings should be cognizant of that and should abide by that rule. It's important for the community to know what's going on and not to have side conversations or other contacts where decisions are made without the community being able to understand the process and what people's views are. So thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jeff?
I'm aware of the open meeting law, and I would never knowingly violate the law. We are servants of our community. We're asking to represent the community. We're asking for their vote, and that's the premise behind the Open Meeting Act, is so that they know what's going on. There are executive sessions where you do talk about personnel matters, about individuals that work at the school district and things like that, but the rest of the things are an open forum, and no, I would not violate that act.
Thank you, Jeff. Laura?
When I prepare witnesses, I tell them just answer the question and don't go any further than the question. So yes, I'm familiar with the open meeting law. Could I recite it? No. Would I knowingly violate it? Absolutely not. I do my best not to go anywhere, just like Jean stated as well, to appear to be violating that. But to expand further, I believe in transparency, and I believe our Board of Education has been transparent as much as possible while I've been on the board. And I would think that not being that transparent, the Open Meetings Act and the transparency are hand in hand. But I think sometimes we may even overshare, but we need that transparency. We need your trust that we're doing the best that we can for you, and all of those tie back to the open meetings. So.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
Yeah, I'm aware of the open meeting law. In fact, I was subject to it when I was on the Economic Development Corporation. And, in essence, the law was written to make sure that decisions, outside conversations between board members, were not occurring to the extent that decisions were being made without the public being aware of the discussions or how the decisions were being made. And beyond the utility of the law, the practicality of it is that there is sometimes a perception from the community members that decisions are made outside of the regular board meetings. And I hear that. And in fact, at times, I wonder myself when I see a decision made and there's not much discussion happening related to the decision. I wonder how they're arriving at the the decision they're making without talking to each other, and the only way that we should be talking to each other is in this open forum. And I haven't attended very many board meetings for the school board, so I don't have a thought about them one way or the other, and I sure have a ton of confidence in the integrity of the members of this board. But it's an integrity issue, but it's also a morale issue for everyone who's employed by the school district and everyone who pays taxes to this district.
Thank you, Tim. I'm going to slip in a question here we got from the audience. Excuse me. Gene, we'll start with you. What are your opinions of the KNEA and NEA, and how would you plan to work with them for the betterment of the school district?
Well, the representatives of the teachers are very important because many of the teachers belong to those organizations, and I think that the district can and has worked with them in the past, and I would expect them to continue to do so. When we have an organization that so many people belong to, it's incumbent upon the school district and the school board to respect the faith that the teachers have in those organizations and to work with them on trying to arrive at the decisions that will be best for the teachers and for the district. Thank you.
Thank you. Jim?
I haven't been a member of those organizations, but being in education for 22 years, I have been a member of similar. And that's where I think I'm unique as a candidate. This is my lifestyle. This is what I do every day. I work in education. I've been doing it for 22 years. I understand what it's like to be a first-year teacher on the salary structure and make $18,000 a year, right? And it was a great $18,000 at that time. I also understand what it's like to want to get additional education so that you move up the salary schedule and you can be a better teacher. And I understand what it's like to work with administration and then move into administration. So I look forward to working with those people because I can share their experiences and understand what they're going through and where their passions are. I don't think that there's any person that's teaching that is teaching because they were affected by one of their own teachers. And I think that's what we need to nurture is that we have teachers that are going to work every day excited to do it and excited to inspire our students.
Thank you. Laura?
As a school board, we're going to be working more with GCEA, or the Garden City Educators Association, which is a branch of the KNEA and the NEA. So I'm going to kind of maybe focus more on them because that's who I'm going to be sitting across the table from. And I think that overall, we have a very good working relationship with GCEA. I believe that that was even shown at negotiations where I hope that some of the past questions of how things are being done and the trust that and more trust has been placed in the administration, especially with Ms. Knoll, our Chief Financial Officer, and the information that she's able to pass on. So the most work that I'm able to do one-on-one with GCEA is at the negotiations table. I appreciate that Joanne Mangan is vocal. She's the president of GCEA right now, and she attends all of our board, or almost all of our board meetings. And honestly, I appreciate the fact that I can see her on Sunday mornings when she's playing organ at my church and can hear what is going on and what the concerns are. I know their officers do not have a problem contacting us when they think that there's a problem, and we can work together on that. And I believe Dr. Carlin has regular meetings with Joanne and perhaps Ms. Knight as well as the lead negotiator in order to make sure that the teachers and the administration are working hand in hand, because I've seen everyone has on the news when teachers aren't working well with the administration, and it just does not work for our kids. We need to be working hand in hand together, and I think we're an example of that.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
Well, this comes back to the comment that I made before about teacher retention. You know, I think if most of us looked at the salaries of teachers, you have to understand that they're not teaching for the money. They're teaching because they love what they do, and because they like to affect kids' lives. And so and I think most teachers recognize how hamstrung the board is in relation to their salaries. It's controlled so much more at the state level. So when they sit across from us, what they want is as much control over the environment that we do affect as board members. And so if you sit across from them in an adversarial relationship, then you've created the type of environment that is disruptive to retention. And so you have to you have to show them the respect that they deserve, and this is their association. And my perception of this board's relationship with the GCEA is that you do have a good relationship with them, and I do commend those of you that have been on the board, because I know a lot of school districts, including a school district that my sisters teach in, that is very adversarial, and it's sad to see that. And especially in this community, we can't afford to have that environment.
Thank you, Tim. Alex?
I can discuss on my experience with GCEA and concur with Laura a lot with her comments. Is I did sit down in board negotiations for 4 years, and we had a great amount of respect for one another. We supported them. They supported us. We didn't always agree on certain things, but we always came to an understanding and moved forward with that. So I fully support GCEA, and I think they're very important to the district.
Thank you. Give me a second here. Jeff, start with you on this one. The debate over academic standards and how best to gauge student performance and hold schools accountable continues in our state and in our country.
Yes, sir.
What's your philosophy for how best to measure student and school district performance?
I don't think there can be one standard. In 22 years of educating, what I've found is that there's a lot of different ways that students are educated, and a lot of different ways that students can perform and be successful. Not everybody is a paper to pen guy. Some guys can go out and they can show their work. They can do it in speech form. I think there has to be a lot of ways for our students to be successful. We have to be creative through technology and through our teachers to give them the opportunity to succeed.
Thank you. Laura?
I think we have come a long way since No Child Left Behind with regard to holding teachers and students accountable with tests. Before, I think it used to be a 6-day process, 3 days with English language arts, 3 days of math, and given our particular school district and the different socioeconomic statuses and the poverty levels that we have, who knew what that child had gone through the night before, and you're expected to hold that teacher accountable for that child's performance on that particular day. And if you didn't, then your school was on improvement. And we had 2 schools, excellent schools, who were on improvement for an incredibly long time that should not have been because of those No Child Left Behind standards. To now we have progressed and have had more flexibility, and now our tests footprints have been reduced. There is not the burden placed on the schools with regard to how well the kids do, or if they meet a certain bar. We need to look and see how far they've come. I know my husband, when he was teaching 6th grade reading, had a child come into his classroom who was probably reading at a 2nd grade level. He got that child up to a 5th grade level. 3 grade levels, but did not make the annual yearly progress because that child did not reach 6th grade level. So, but it didn't matter that the huge increase. Now that increase does matter. And the state testing has reduced its footprint by 60%. We need to do the same thing with our daily testing as well. So again, going back to teachers and letting the teachers teach, because generally speaking, that teacher knows what's going on with that particular kid. And if they're slammed and put into one particular day where that child is just not going to be able to perform, they need to have the flexibility to say, okay, I know you just had to leave your house at midnight last night. I'll do the test tomorrow, or something of that nature, so we can be more flexible.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
Tim?
And this brushes a little bit on our progression from No Child Left Behind to Common Core. And when I speak with educators, not with educators, when I speak with the community and parents, I'm amazed at the misperceptions related to Common Core. Common Core are nothing more than a standardized set of standards that their goals and skills that we have laid out that the kids should be able to, or at least try to achieve from grade to grade. And it's a standardization throughout the country. The Common Core doesn't dictate curriculum, nor does it dictate how we test that achievement with the kids. And that's, so I actually am in favor of Common Core because it's just a set of standards. And it leaves a flexibility of developing the curriculum to achieve those standards to the school district, and it also leaves a flexibility of the testing to measure progress to the school district as well. In the end, what we're looking for is outcome. And we spoke before about how many of these kids are going to need a post-secondary education in order to achieve a job status in the next 5 years or in the next 10 years. And so for me, the statistics that matter the most are graduation rates and the number of kids who not only seek post-secondary education but are able to complete post-secondary education from our school district. Did we prepare them for something beyond high school? Did they enter those programs and did they complete those programs? Those statistics matter to me a lot.
Thank you, Tim.
I'm
Alex.
sorry, can
That's
you
okay.
repeat the question?
The debate over academic standards and how best to gauge student performance and hold schools accountable continues in our state and in our country. What's your philosophy for how best to measure student and school district performance?
And that's a great question. I'm kind of glad, I'm very glad that we are moving away from NCLB, No Child Left Behind. I did like the Common Core career and readiness standards, but we took it so far to take teaching away from the teacher and develop a standard that she had to follow day by day by day, whether that student was ready for that day to learn that and still not understanding what was happening the day before. We need to create more teachable moments for those teachers. I believe that if you work with the teachers and the school board does, they do a great job working with the teachers, sending those teachers out, bring back the best information to create a new curriculum or to improve on the curriculum we got to teach those students is, I think, a great step moving forward. I don't want the students and the teachers being just great test takers. We need to have critical thinking. We need to be able to provide a great education for them students to move on to post-secondary education or to a trade school that I attended, to be critical thinkers and to be success in their future growth.
Thank you, Alex. Jean?
I believe that we use several different methods of determining student and school district performance. We do use state assessments, and I would prefer to minimize that and reduce it to a greater extent. We use nationally standardized tests such as the ACT, and that's a broad view of how our students are faring against other students across the nation. I think our graduation rate is one of the best ways to look at how we're doing as a school district and how our students are doing, and to track our students and see how many of those students are attending some sort of post-secondary education, the ones that are going to college and completing those programs, or who have engaged in a career and are successful in that, and those who decided to do a training program of some sort and have completed that. So I think that the best way to determine student and school district performance is really after they have graduated, but we need to have better tracking in place to determine that, and I think that is coming. So, thank you.
Thank you, Jean. We have a couple more questions. We have another one from the audience, but we're running out of time. So we're going to move to the closing statements. And Laura, you're up.
Okay. Well, again, thank you so much for all of those who are in attendance. I think this is probably the biggest crowd that we've had the past couple of times that I've been here at a candidate forum. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it. Again, thank you to the Chamber and to the Telegram and the city and everyone else who had a hand in this evening's event. I'd like to thank everyone here who's willing to take that step to help us in the community. It's an incredible privilege to be able to serve on the Board of Education. It's been a privilege to serve with all those that I have been able to serve with. I believe that we've had such a unique experience with the variety of people that we have on the school board. I think Coach Sims mentioned earlier that it's usually business owners or something of that nature, but the variety that we have on our board right now, from those based off of education, based off of jobs, and things of that nature, I believe have given us a very well-rounded ability to make a decision for the betterment of the kids, the teachers, and the community. And I hope that I'm able to serve another 4 years to continue with that. There's a lot of things I still want to see done to help kids out, getting our class sizes reduced. I'm one who had test anxiety. I hope we can just get rid of tests personally. I know that's never going to happen, but that would be great. I would like to be able to continue. I still have a vested interest in this. I have 2 kiddos still going through. And I want to make sure that it's as good of a place to have an education as possible. So I look forward to your support. I guess another thing to briefly mention, October 17th, I believe, is the end of voter registration. So if you have moved, if you have changed your name, there was a laundry list I heard the other day. Make sure that you filled out your new voter registration card and have gotten that mailed it in, or turned it in to the clerk's office just down the street. And early voting, I believe, starts on October 18th. So please consider all of the different resources that you have to vote, because this is your chance to have your voice heard. It's probably one of the simplest things that we can do to keep our democracy, or as I see Senator Dahl in the back, our republic going forward. So please register, please vote, and I would appreciate your support on November 7th. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Tim?
My original story, and the points I keep coming back to are, how do we grab the kids that finish high school and motivate them to move beyond high school? We've talked about the fact that by the time this term is finished, that 65% of our kids are going to require more than high school. And right now, about half the kids from our high school are going beyond their 4 years there. There are estimates that by the time 2 of these elections have occurred, that 80% of the kids would require more school than what they received in the 4 years in our high school. 80%. Technology is changing our economy so fast that I think we should be a little bit concerned about that. Since 2011, our post-secondary education rate has not changed. We need to be thinking about different ways to grab these kids. We need to be thinking about different ways to teach these kids. We need to be thinking about partnerships with the private industry, and different technologies that we might use to change the way that we're approaching our education. Our kids are our greatest resource. We have a very short time to figure out better ways to grab the talent that I know is in our schools and put them on a path that we need as a community, and put them on a path that they deserve as kids.
Thank you, Tim. Alex?
Again, to ditto what Laura and Tim said, thank you to the Chamber of Commerce for holding this, the City Commission, all the folks that came out, all the voters. I want to be a part of this great education and this great district that is serving our community. From the very first time that I moved here 18 years ago and meeting a lot of the people, and then 14 years ago when I started my business and working for a lot of the customers around town, I've grown a great appreciation for their community involvement, whether it's small or big. I appreciate the time and friendship I've had with Senator Dahl back there, and to listen to him at some of the meetings, agree or disagree, but it's a great process as an individual for me to go through and to learn what our community is about, what our district's about, what can we do for our students and our teachers and our community. Be homegrown, bring people back. It's amazing. I would love to have that opportunity afforded to me to be able to serve the community and the students and teachers and staff again. Thank you for coming.
Thank you, Alex. Jean?
Thank you. Thank you for the opportunity to come before the community to express my opinion as to how we as a school board and I as a member of the school board could best serve the community. The issues we deal with on a day-to-day basis are as varied as each of the students that we seek to educate and prepare for their role as members of our community. These students are not just the future of our community, but the future of our state and our nation. And we need to ensure that we have done the best job to educate every single one of them and to prepare them for a post-high school career, college, or training program. We partner with our parents, staff, and community to take on the responsibility of educating our students and preparing them to assume those leadership roles in our communities in the not-too-distant future. As a member of the school board, my job as I see it is to ensure that our schools do the best job possible to prepare these young people for the future. In short, that we have, as our mission states, quality learning with a goal of creating responsible citizens for our community, and to ensure that the hopes and dreams of our students and community have for their future are able to be realized. I believe I have the background and experience to effectively represent our community and am willing to work hard to do so. I take very seriously the responsibility and trust placed in me as a school board member, and I would be honored to have the opportunity to continue to serve as a member of the board. I ask for your vote in the upcoming election in November. Thank you.
Thank you, Jean. Jeff?
Thank you. I appreciate everybody coming today, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you. And thank you all for your interest in being the school board, because obviously you care. You care about our community. You care about our school. The fact of the matter is there's 17,808 registered voters in our state, can vote for this election for the USD 457, but there's less than 50 people here tonight, okay? We need people that are passionate about our school district. 50% of our students are not going on to college, and right now 7 out of 10 jobs require a post-secondary education. We have to work and be creative to help our students and our teachers be successful here in the future. A good leader doesn't keep his head down. A good leader can look forward and see the changes that are coming ahead. 22 years I've worked in education. I've gotten 178 students full scholarships to 4-year universities. I work on the front lines every day with students, with teachers. I understand the educational trends, and I'd love to represent you on the USD 457 school board.
Thank you, Jeff. On behalf of the Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce, we'd like to thank Alex, Jean, Jeff, Laura, and Tim for coming out tonight. We appreciate your time. I'd also like to again thank the City of Garden City for providing the venue for tonight's forum. We'd like to thank KDGL TV 23 for being here. Want to remind everybody, if you know somebody who was unable to attend, or if you'd like to look at this again, you can certainly do this. Garden City Area Chamber of Commerce Facebook will have it, correct? You can go to our website, click on there, and it'll take you there. Is that correct?
It'll be there tomorrow.
Well, yeah, I know it's not there right now.
Tonight it has to go do what it's doing now.
Okay, so with that, we're going to take a short break here. At 7:30, we will start the candidate forum for the Garden City Community College Board of Trustees. And thank you all for coming out here. Thank you.
Thank you.